legs, and like my left leg had an extra joint in it.
Oh man.
I opened the tongue of my boot, and then that's when I saw the blood. My bone was sticking out. I got that old military fighter jet trainer that I own. So
I had totally forgotten about that.
yeah,
I wouldn't have remembered. Let's go into that. Remind me. Hello, this is Jimbo from the YouTube channel Jimbo, South Dakota, and this is the Hog House Chronicles podcast. And today I have an old friend. He's not so old, but we've known each other a long time, Aaron Werner, and he's agreed to come on the podcast here. We're going to learn about his younger days. He is a very busy individual. A lot of things going on, so that's what we're here to talk about. So thanks for coming on, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, I usually start this off just so we have a little history on you, and you can just say as much as you want about how you were raised, family, and if you had any other family members in the military, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, thanks again for having me. And my name is Aaron Werner. I'm born and raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Family of four, some parents, and then I got a younger brother. Just living over in La Crosse, Wisconsin right now, and grew up, pretty standard childhood, and went to Lincoln High School, involved in sports. I was a track and cross country. Then I was very fortunate to kind of know what I wanted to do since I was before I can remember, but I was just always interested in aviation, and I started with drawing airplanes and color book airplanes, and then plastic model airplanes, and then RC planes, and then kind of when I graduated high school, I knew that I wanted to join the military and be a fighter pilot. So went up to SDSU, went through their aviation program, graduated as a certified flight instructor from there, and then I guess backing up a little bit. From what I knew at the time, just talking to, we'd go to all the air shows and talking to all the pilots, and from what I knew at the time, it sounded like I had to go to one of the service academies. So that's kind of what that's the path I started down and started applying, and you need a congressional nomination to get accepted, and I received one for the Naval Academy and the Merchant Marine Academy, and visited the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy, and I kind of decided if I couldn't get in the Air Force Academy, like I wasn't really interested in any of the other ones. So, but then that's the first time I was introduced to the South Dakota Air Guard. I went down, talked to a recruiter, and kind of told them what I wanted to do, and they're like, "Well, we can't hire you as a pilot, but we got a lot of positions open to where we can get you involved in the aircraft and interacting with the pilots, and by the way, we'll pay half your tuition if you go to in-state school, and give you a GI Bill and a kicker, and excuse me, it all just kind of made sense. I could go to school close to home, and it was just the perfect fit for me. So I went up to SDSU, and or at first I enlisted in 2002, so right my senior year of high school, listed in the Avionics shop, and did that for 6 years, a few years as a full-time technician while I finished my degree, and then graduated in 08 from SDSU, and then I was selected for a pilot position, I think in June of 2008. So.
And was that your first time applying?
No, I started applying, so you needed 90 credit hours of college. So I started applying right away. Interviewed, actually, so I took the ASVAB, the officer AFOQT. That's what I'm looking for. So I took that, did really well, and in all the areas except the verbal portion. And so the joke is, I can't talk good, which you'll probably see as this goes on. But so the first year with the South Dakota Air Guard, you always get feedback and critique and learn how to improve yourself for the next time. And they said, we had interviewed really well, and but we can't hire you because I didn't meet the minimum score for the verbal, which everything's happens for a reason, so it kind of worked out. But went back, retook the test, applied the next year. I think they were only hiring one spot, and
that makes it tough.
As
it's tough anyway.
It's very very competitive, and I just I wasn't the right candidate that year. I interviewed Madison, Wisconsin, Great Falls, Montana, Duluth. I actually picked up the alternate slot in Duluth, and then just before I interviewed with the South Dakota Air Guard for the third time, and that's when I was selected. So.
So when you were, I couldn't remember if you were prior enlisted, so you answered that question.
Yep.
When you were choosing the career field on the enlisted side, did they talk to you about the Avionics Shop, that's a plus for, learning as much of the avionics as a jet as possible for applying to be a pilot, or did anybody talk about that at all?
They did a little bit, but yeah, they basically said, you're going to be working on the aircraft, and obviously that's something I'd want to do anyway. And then, one unique thing about avionics, after every flight, the pilots go through a debrief, and that's with someone in avionics. So I got to know all the pilots kind of, personally, or more personally than other career fields would have. So that kind of helped my chances, when it came time to interview. And
right, and you're working on the jet, but you're also working on the parts that they're actively using while they're flying.
Correct. Yep.
Instead of something that just this breaks and you fix it, and they just know that it always works when they're flying it. But this is something that they actually operate during flights. So.
And then me, going through the civilian pilot training at the time, it just made sense and was good fit. And looking back, like it was a great precursor to flying the jet too, because when I was the pilot going through debrief, now I could those specific things that we looked for as a maintainer, I was able to, I feel like, give a better debrief and some ideas to help troubleshoot or fix the issue. So
so some of the guys talk about like Guy Bauermeister, he was one of the latest ones. He knew since he was a tiny little kid. His dad was into aviation, his grandpa also military and civilian. And some we talk about like a guy I met him a while back at combat survival training, but he was mentioned during Guy's podcast. Uncle is his call sign, but was prior enlisted special ops and never really thought about this as a younger person, but then saw the jets over top while he was doing ground ops and decided then that he would like to do that. So at about what age did you say it was high school or something you decided that actually fighter pilot is what you wanted to do? Or
yeah,
what was that?
It was probably actually closer to middle school, really. So it, like I said, I had no one in my family is a pilot or was into aviation. I don't know where the interest came from. It's just something I've been fascinated with since before I can remember. But I remember at one point, I just wanted to. I didn't want to join the military. I just wanted to fly fast jets. That's obviously before I knew much, but it became apparent that fighter jets are belong to the military, so that's kind of was obvious at that point. But
I call it flying the Corvette.
Yeah, yep. So, but yeah, the goal was to be a fighter pilot, whether it was F-16, F-15, or any other fighter airframes out there. I was willing to kind of do whatever it take, go wherever I had to fulfill that dream. So it just happened to work out that I got to fly fighters out of my hometown, which is which I'm very thankful for.
You mentioned going to air shows. Did you obviously probably went to the Sioux Falls ones. Or were there any other air shows that you would go to? Did you press your family, I want to go to this one or that one?
I specifically remember the air show down at Offutt Air Force Base, and I think I still have the T-shirt with the Blue Angels, and I don't remember what year that was, but I specifically remember going to that one, talking to an F-15 pilot, and watching the Blue Angels down there. And
I was part of that unit back in the late '80s when I was active duty.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just for 2.5 years, but their air shows were huge.
Yep. Yeah, I think we probably went. It was me, our whole family, and I think we went just because of me. One of those things your parents do for you. And you don't realize it at the time, but looking back, I remember all those experiences and just the impact and the motivation it provided.
So what airplanes were you flying, or had you flown before you were chosen as a fighter pilot?
Just your standard trainers. Cessna 172s. I think a Piper Seminole for my multi-engine rating. I actually owned a couple airplanes in college. One was a Cessna 150, a tail dragger. Then I bought a single seat Pitts bi-wing, kind of an air show aerobatic plane, but nothing too impressive. Just your single engine piston.
The word impressive. Here's what I'm thinking is impressive. A college guy's going to airplanes in college. That's pretty sweet deal, having that opportunity to be able to do that for yourself.
Yep. Yeah, it probably wasn't the smartest thing financially, but at the time, but I built a lot of hours quicker than a lot of my my friends at the time, and I was actually able to rent one of them out to do tail wheel endorsements, and so I got a little bit of a return on my investment there, and went to pilot training. And Scott Burr, he's still in the unit in Intel now. I remember we flew both my planes down to Texas, to Wichita Falls, which is where Shepherd Air Force Base is, where I went through undergraduate pilot training. We flew them both down there, dropped one off, and then flew the other one back shortly before I moved down there to start pilot training. And I was only student pilot with an airplane down there. So it was a lot of good memories. And
yeah, that's pretty amazing. Oh man, I had a question right in my head to follow with that. I'll just go with this. What did it feel like, driving down there, getting to Shepherd, versus, what was some of the most challenging portions of the pilot training for you?
Well, I tell you the first biggest challenge, I had an accident out in the Black Hills snowmobiling. So I went to the first phase of pilot training, which is called initial flight screening in Pueblo, Colorado, and I brought both my snowmobiles out there, and that it was kind of an optional course, but it's made to basically take a zero-time pilot to through a comparable private pilot course in just a matter of weeks. It's kind of like a pre-screening for undergraduate pilot training, and I was already a flight instructor, so I had more experience than some of the instructors did down there. But I was like, I don't have a job. It's I get put on orders, and it'll be a good intro to how the military runs pilot training. And so I was only there a couple weeks. It kind of proficiency advanced me through it. But yeah, on the way back, I swung through the Black Hills and was involved in an accident. It was nobody's fault but my own, but broke my left leg.
Oh, my word.
Tibia. And it was a compound fracture. Oh, man. And I remember sitting on the side of the hill, and I was sliding down the hill after the snowmobile kind of rolled, and my leg got caught between a tree and the engine of the snowmobile as it was rolling sideways down the hill. And it hit me in the tree, and then I remember sliding down the hill and trying to move my legs, and my left leg had an extra joint in it.
Oh man. Yeah, because you got all your clothing on, so
Yep.
As far as being compound, you didn't see the bone sticking out,
probably. Well, not initially, but my leg was kind of numb and obviously shock, and just trying to happen super quick, but I opened the tongue of my boot, and then that's when I saw the blood. My bone was sticking out, and I was like, well, this was Valentine's Day, 2008, and I was supposed to leave for pilot training about a month, like 4 weeks after that. Or I started in April of 2008, so yeah, I was, call it 8 weeks. And so that was like the first time where it's like, I've worked so hard for this, and now like I might have just ended it, so that was emotionally, and that was probably the first biggest challenge. But so I went to emergency surgery, and they put a rod in it, so I got a titanium rod, and believe it or not, I showed up to pilot training, on time. I was on
time.
Yeah, I was. So I Oscar, he was the OG at the time, and I remember calling him and telling him what happened, and he's like, all right, well, I mean, no big deal. We'll figure it out. And I guess the biggest thing is if you're gonna need a waiver or be medically DQ'd, and because everything was internal, there was really no waiver required, and it was just a matter of if I could start my original class date, or how that goes. You miss a class date, and it takes months to find another one, and they basically said, let's push for your original class date. And so yeah, I showed up, like I said, on crutches and a lot of pain, but I was pretty determined to stay on timeline. And
because I didn't hear anything back then about you being delayed, going to, because usually the new pilots would come to us, get a flight suit, some boots, and then we'd hear the dates or whatever that you're leaving and all that. But I hadn't remembered anything where you were when you were delayed. When you were interviewing to be a fighter pilot at the Air Guard, South Dakota Air Guard, did they know at that time you had the alternate slot in, what was it, Minnesota?
Duluth, yeah.
Duluth?
Yep.
Did they know you had that alternate slot?
They did, yeah. I think I told them, and I think they probably already knew, but I think that was a deciding factor. It's like, hey, if we don't pick this guy up now, then kind of how Duluth, or at least how they did it at the time, like the alternate would be the primary the following year, assuming.
So they knew you had already passed that interview there and stuff and got chosen, so that had to work for you.
So, yep. So yeah, that was kind of the first challenge, and then after pilot training started, the first several weeks are just academics, and then you start your simulator training, and then you hit the flight line. But a prerequisite to hitting the flight line is doing the PLFs, or parachute landing falls, and
with that leg.
Yep. And so, and it was still very swollen, very, very painful, and like part of the training is they have like an 8-foot platform, and with a bunch of pea gravel underneath, and you jump from 8 feet and practice your PLFs. And I remember talking to the instructor, like, hey, I had surgery. It was about 8 to 10 weeks before that. So my leg was obviously not even close to fully healed. And I told him, he's like, well, you don't have to do it, but you can't stay in this class, if you don't. And so which meant I'd have to get washed back to 1 or 2 classes. I don't know. So I was like, well, it's metal, so I'm not going to break it. I might bend it, but I'm not going to break it, So I ended up completing the training, and that was, other than breaking it in the first place and in the recovery, because it did get infected, so there were some complications with it. So other than that pain, it was probably one of the most painful things I've had to endure. But
right, because they train you how to turn your body into a spring when you hit to reduce the impact force, but you were probably very obviously using the other leg a lot more for that spring action, is my guess. Yep.
Yeah, I was definitely favoring it as much as I could, but at the end of the day, I remember going back to my dorm room and putting my leg up, and my leg it's just all swollen up, and just iced it, and you can't self-medicate, so it
grit it out.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was probably my two biggest challenges throughout the whole process. But just one of those things that happen for no rhyme or reason. And ever since I got selected, that was always in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, I gotta stay healthy. And it was just, I wasn't doing anything reckless. It's just kind of one of those things that.
Mm-hmm. That's why they call them accidents.
Yeah. Yep. So,
with having a lot of flight hours, what were some of the pros and cons that you noticed going to military flight training as opposed to all the training you'd had before and the number of hours flown?
Yeah, I think just the pace of the training. I mean, they call it the fire hose method. So it's just an overwhelming amount of information in a short amount of time, and there's not enough time in the day to be fully prepared for the next day. So it really tests your time management skills and how to prioritize what the nearest threat. So they talk about like near ox, far ox, So, but you're always consistently doing academics for a phase you're not in yet. You're doing sims for the phase that you're currently in that you're flying. So there's times you could be doing 3 different phases of the training all at one time, and they're full days. And then some days you start at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Just depends on when their flying window is. So just super fast paced. I definitely feel like the experience I had just on procedures and aircraft systems, and granted the speed of the aircraft was probably another sharp or steep learning curve, because you're flying just 2 or 3 times faster than you did in the training aircraft. So
you started in a propeller type trainer and then moved on to the T-38, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I think I was the second class to transition to the T6, the Texan 2, which is a tandem seat, turboprop, fully aerobatic, pressurized. So that replaced the T-37. And then so you fly that for about 6 months, roughly 120 hours. You start with your just your contact phase, taking off, landing, just aircraft handling, slow flight, all just your basic, and then go into instrument formation, low level is kind of the syllabus, and then go to the centrifuge for the first time shortly before you graduate from the T6, and then to prep you for the T-38, and then like NJEP, they call it Air NATO Jet Joint Pilot Training, is a little different from other UPT bases in the fact that like everybody goes at the T-38. Other bases, like it determines if you drop a fighter or a bomber, then you go to the T-38 track. But if you're going to heavies, KC-135, C-17, then you'll go to the T-1, which is basically a business jet. But everybody at Shepherd, regardless of what your next airframe is, goes to the T-38. So, and then a T-38, that's about another 6 months long, about 100 hours. And then if you're going to a fighter bomber, you go through Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, which is about a 6 to 9 week course. They teach you the basics of air-to-air, air-to-ground, and basically how to turn the airplane into a weapon system.
How early do they get you into formation flying?
I mean, it's within. That's probably the second or third phase in the T6. So I mean, it's
right away.
It's yeah. So you probably have I'm probably less than 40 hours of actual flight time, but before you.
Yeah, because I've heard some guys having issues with the formation portion, so then they've gone on to heavies. Do you see that as, I don't know how many guys you've seen wash out or not be quite as successful in some areas or not. Is formation flying right up there high, or is it just a variation of subjects that cause people to not be able to fly fighters in particular?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors, but ranging from just basic aircraft control to flight discipline, decision making, just your basic stick and rudder skills. But yeah, formation flying I had a little bit experience when, so I kind of probably had a little bit of an advantage, but it's not comfortable being that close to another aircraft, and especially in a dynamic environment, a 3D environment. I mean, it's fun, but it definitely takes some getting used to, and obviously there's very little room for air.
Yeah, maximum attention.
Yep. So, but yeah, I don't think we had anybody wash out in UPT. I think we lost a guy or two in the centrifuge, and then I think we lost another couple guys in the B course or the F-16 basic course for one for G's and another just I don't know.
Did you experience any negatives for having a lot of civilian flight hours before going, or did that just mostly help you out?
Yeah, I really didn't have any bad habits, I guess. So honestly, I didn't really ever struggle through any of the pilot training. I mean, I was out of my comfort zone, and I didn't breeze through it by any means, but I failed, check right here, check right there. But they always say you're 3 days away from washing out a pilot training. I mean, from day one. I mean, so they kind of put that scare tactic in you, because what gets a lot of people in trouble is they'll fail one thing, and it could be an academic test, something very simple. It could be a sim ride, or a flight or a check ride, but they let that snowball, and so they have that in the back of the mind, and then the 3 days from washing out, and they just can't overcome that, and they just let it compound, and but
got to figure out the way ahead instead of looking back.
I think where I struggled the most was actually when I got back to the squadron, and you're an MQT student, and you're under the microscope, and that they don't really, you're not doing any weapons training or anything in UPT, but obviously the F-16 is a weapon system, and that's all it is. And flying the jet is just you just do it because you have to. It's like you fly the jet is like blinking and breathing. It's a second. It's got to be a natural instinct, because you got so many sensors that you're trying to manage as a single pilot. So I really that's where I got back to the squadron. I was like, man, is this for me? I mean, I was just really
wow.
Hooking rides and just making stupid mistakes, and it was pretty humbling, actually. And like now I'm in front of people that I know, and knew before I left, and but I was probably slightly above average student going through the whole training process, and now I'm back in my squadron, and just kind of under increased supervision. So that took some getting used to. And
the way I've described it to some non-pilots is that the actual flying of the jet is the least thing that you do until we get into, the egress situation or ejecting, where you're doing all this other stuff you're talking about, running all your weapon systems, but then all of a sudden now something's wrong with the jet, and you got to flip this switch off and this one on and do everything perfectly pertaining to the jet.
Yep.
I told a lot of people, I said that's a lot of pressure.
Yep. And like the jets they're old, and towards the end of my career, we were starting to see malfunctions and issues that weren't in the checklist, that weren't, it's like, well, what's this? Or, how do we troubleshoot this? So it's, you kind of got to be a critical thinker and know your systems. And it's kind of the answer always isn't in the checklist. And that's kind of where that discipline and just flight knowledge come into play.
So where'd you go for F-16 training specifically, and what did it feel like? What did you notice was different?
Yeah, so I went to Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. So that was about a 12-month course, and I think roughly 100 to 120 hours in the jet. But I remember getting there, and I remember through my whole career, and because flying the F-16 was something I wanted so bad, I didn't believe it was going to happen. You know, I mean, there's a number of things that can happen. So like going through training, I was always, instead of looking, you know, months or a year down the road to being in the F-16, I was like, well, you know, I got to get through this first. You know, I got to get through the T6s, then I got to get through the centrifuge for the first time, then I got to get through T-38 and IF. So it was always, I kind of broke it down, and it was always just focused on what the next step is and not what the ultimate goal is. But because, you know, I mean, I was worried about passing the first flying class physical before you even leave for training, because a lot of guys get washed. I mean, my college roommate, he got selected ahead of me with the South Dakota Air Guard, and he went to do his flight physical, and they DQ'd him from flight status for something that may be an issue later on in life with his eyes. And so, I mean, and he's perfectly healthy. I mean, just all these things in the back of your mind. It's like, but I remember, walking out to the F-16, my first flight, and then walking out, you know, after, I think you had probably three or four flights is all in the F-16 with an instructor, and then you're soloing. But I remember walking out, and this is the day like I've been waiting for. And I think I was probably 24 years old at the time, and you know, my whole entire life, like, and I finally made it. You know, I'm soloing the F-16 for the first time, and something you'll never forget. And so,
how did that compare to the first flight at the South Dakota Air Guard after you graduated pilot training?
Yeah, so it kind of the same thing, and it kind of gives me goosebumps talking about it. So, like, backing up a long ways, my dad used to work at Carlisle Plastics, which is basically from Building 60. It's straight to the south, and the west side of the building faces runway 321. And I remember, I don't know how old I was. I think I was probably 4, maybe 5 years old. But my mom would take me to have lunch with my dad at Carlisle Plastics, and we'd sit on the concrete steps facing the runway and watch the A7s take off and land and whatnot. And I remember I probably said that that's what I wanted to do, or you know, one of those other memories I'll never forget. But so, you know, when I was fresh back at the squadron and starting to fly, my dad being retired, he would ask when I was flying and which runway we were taking off, and he'd come out and watch, and like, what number are you? 1, 2, 3, or 4, or I guess, you know, 2 or 4 at that time, being a wingman. But I remember taking off runway 21 one time, and he was sitting in his truck right next to the curb, right next to those steps that, you know, we had ate lunch together, you know, 20 years before that, which, and it's still there. So, yeah, it's pretty special, and like, they've supported me in any way that they could, and encouraged me, and just super proud. So, looking
through the canopy to your right, through the chain link fence from the other side.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So, just definitely couldn't ask for a better career, and just very humbled and fortunate to be able to have done it. So,
So did you do some flying overseas?
Yeah, so I deployed 5 different times with the South Dakota Air Guard, 2 times as an avionics specialist. So,
with the enlisted side.
Yep, 06 and 08 to Iraq, and then in 2010 when they went to Iraq for the 3rd time, I was in pilot training. So my first deployment in the jet was at 2013 to Jordan, Azraq Air Base, and then went to Korea in 2015, then Kunsan, and then Afghanistan in 2018. So
I was far enough along in my career that I never got to go with you on any of those.
Yep.
My last one was I did all 3 trips to Iraq, and that last one was got home February of 2010.
Yep.
So then I had little TDYs here and there after that. Plus I did a bunch of staff assistance visits, more stuff inspections and things, but never really got to travel with squadron much after that. So when I was waiting for you to come here, I was sitting over here watching some videos, and I was trying to remember if we had even done any TDYs together. Maybe one to Tucson for Snowbird, maybe.
Yep.
Angela and I went on that one.
Yep.
So that was it.
Yeah, I remember,
Wow.
being on the enlisted side, I remember we always had a list, the deployments, whether deployments or TDYs, but, who wants to go, and there's a pecking order. But as a pilot, it's like you're going, especially as a young guy, like there's really no choice. It's so that was one of the big differences from the ops side to the
So we did
side.
deploy together a couple times, but
Yep.
you were over on the maintenance side, tucked in, working on the airplanes, and I was in ops.
Yep.
So, wow. Do you have any specific things or stories you'd like to tell on any of your deployments?
I remember, I guess probably the one that stands out the most and was from Afghanistan. I was on the night train, so flying, most of the night missions, and we had aircraft in the air, 24 hours. But I was flying with Psycho. I was the flight lead, and he was the wingman, and we were just kind of doing armed overwatch and watched two or three Chinook helicopters come in with one of the SEAL teams, and they were doing a raid, which they primarily did at night, and pretty benign mission, nothing too crazy initially, but so we're just, we had sensor tasking, so we're basically following whatever team we were assigned to, and pretty soon there was troops in contact, and the group I was following, one of the SEALs, or they call them Eagle, got hit on a rooftop, and they were under pretty heavy fire. They were pinned down, so they were trying to get to them, and I remember kind of coordinating with my wingman or Psycho. I was like, hey, I think, and we watched the two, I don't know if they were Taliban or, but they watched them go into one of the buildings, and I was like, well, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have us drop these buildings, and so we took our turning pod marks and just kind of set up, because we kind of knew what was coming, and of course we were getting, towards the end of our vol time, and so I went over and coordinated to extend our vol time, and things got pretty intense pretty quick. But what ended up happening is, in this particular stack, we had helicopters, surface to 500 feet. Then we had, I think, we had a AC-130 gunship, and obviously we were flying a right-hand wheel on the F-16, and then the gunship is flying a left-hand wheel. And then I think above that we had some EW platforms or whatnot. But sure enough, they extended our vol time, and they called for weapons on these structures, and we'd already talked about which weapons we wanted to use to mitigate the collateral damage and whatnot. But the biggest thing is it was the Eagle, and he had somebody with him at the time. They were within 70 meters of the buildings, because then they couldn't move, and so that's based on the fragment of the bombs we were going to drop. They were within the danger close envelope, so it just requires a special authorization to drop under those conditions. But we kind of saw it coming, and were prepared for it. We got cleared for the attack, and there was other restricted operating zones, so other firefights or missions going on in the area. So, and you have to stay out of those because there's other aircraft and assets in there, and if you don't have clearance to go through it, there's potential for mid-air collision and stuff like that. So, and then the other issue we had is we were up against the border of Iran, and so we couldn't really extend too far past the target And then the third issue is we had the gunship that was below us that we had to deconflict the flight of our bomb to. So, and
one question, do the guys that are in the danger close position, do they have any say in this? Like you see in the movies, they're like, do it anyway, or any of that?
I mean, yeah, they knew the risk and they knew what was going on, and they're the ones that ultimately cleared us for the attack.
Okay, so they do get a say in it. They
Yep.
can ask for it and or authorize it.
Yep. Yeah,
based on they're the ones in danger.
Yeah, they wanted those bombs there to want to break up the firefight so they could get out of there. So and we have 2 radios in the F-16, and you're listening to multiple. There's just constant radio chatter. So and some of the frequencies are shared. So a lot of radio chatter. But I remember we extended out, got the clearance to. We turned in. I got the clearance, cleared hot, which is, permission to release our bombs. And we had to time it with the AC-130 gunship to where, they were basically opposite the target when we were going overhead. So they, our bombs would clear. And I remember hitting the pickle button, the weapons release button, and, you feel the bombs come off, and I got the targeting pod. So you're watching where I just remember saying, God, I hope this works, because there's very little room for error, and there's potential to kill fellow Americans,
right?
If you don't do
and
everything
was
right.
This your first time dropping like that?
I think a
most
danger
memorable?
close scenario, yeah.
Yeah.
But not my first weapons employment, but and so like that, I think our time of flight is around 30 seconds. But I just remember that was like the longest 30 seconds of my life. And hope is never a game plan, and that's why we train so intensely and stuff. So it's when you get in those stressful situations, you do everything right, or it's just habit pattern. So, but I remember, both those bombs they shacked both. Like they're supposed to, and it was even after the bomb hits, like you're waiting for radio chatter to make sure it's
right.
There's no collateral damage, or the people you're trying to save are still still alive. But so that was probably, and I was the flight lead, So you're driving the fight, and that was kind of like the pinnacle of my career, where it's like, I can do this. And looking back at it, I think about it as like, we just, it's like second nature. It's incredibly difficult, but just the training that we had, and that the standard that our squadron held ourselves to, like we were able to do that. And
you mentioned the critical thinking, but also quick thinking along with that. You can be critical and be pretty slow.
Yep.
But not when you're flying jets like that and doing those kinds of missions.
Yep.
So that's one that stands out the most in your mind.
Yeah, it is. It's at night, so you're wearing night vision goggles. So there's just that a challenge of trying to stay visual with your wingmen, and the night vision goggles. You can't. Those are for looking outside, but to look in the cockpit, you're looking under it, and you got to write stuff down, and definitely some other factors. And we're in the mountains, and with low illume, so not a lot of cultural lighting, so it's to potentially get spatial disoriented, and so.
And light within the cockpit, when you have to look under the gogs to be able to see enough in there, I could imagine that would be an issue.
Yeah, and the other thing, I'm left-handed, and like the side stick on the F-16 is obviously over on the right, but a lot of writing down when you're doing close air support or overwatch, or basically the primary mission that the F-16 does is you're writing a lot of stuff down. Well, like being left-handed, it's really easy for me to fly the jet, and I can write stuff down, and
because you're just letting go of the throttle on the left side.
Yeah, usually you just set that and kind of forget it, anyways. But it's just very fortunate in all aspects of my life. I have 2015 vision still, and That was another thing I was concerned about, just getting medically, because the option for LASIX or whatever the other one is wasn't an option, when I was going through it. So I was like, well, you had to have 20/20 vision, or there was no waivers at the time. So, but
well, yours was better than 20/20 to start with, so you had a little cushion there.
Yep. Yeah. So back to that story, we finished that mission and went back, debriefed, and just kind of go about your day. But the next day, those two, well, not the guy that was wounded, but the other guy, and I think one of the JTACs, they stopped by the squadron and they're asking, hey, is Viper, whatever call sign was, they from last night in, and they came in to personally thank us, and they said they got hit with the debris from the blast of the bomb, and
yeah,
that was pretty cool. So I think everybody, all of our my squadron mates that were over there for that deployment have stories like that, and I think they'd all say that was probably the highlight of their career. And just you train your whole career. It's just practice and training, but that was a real deal. We're taking off with live ammunition, live bombs, chaff and flare, and like it's once you cross the fence, if you end up on the ground for whatever reason, like you're not safe. So, but yeah, so that was definitely the highlight and something I think about.
So Psycho, your wingman, as we were talking over here when I went to Portland, I, when he got out, he moved back to Montana where he's from.
He did, yep.
I stayed with him for a night.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, went back there and saw him and his wife and kids, and
yep.
Stayed the night on my way out to Portland, and then hit Great Falls on the way back.
Yep.
See a good friend of mine up there in the Guard. But,
yep.
Yeah, Psycho was doing well up there. He's loving his ranching.
I bet, yeah.
So.
I need to stop in there if I ever get up that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a good trip, and that was really, really good seeing it, because I used to live right down over here.
Yep.
And, well, here's something I remember. Side note: you used to work for a farmer just north of me.
Yeah.
Years ago.
Voxdale, Ryan Voxdale.
Yeah, and that was shortly after you came back here from pilot training and started flying the 16, or was that you'd been back for a few years? How'd you get started doing that, and why? You were pretty busy anyway.
Yeah, so all the pilots that you get hired, you go through training, you come back, and you're guaranteed 2 years of orders. And then it's a part-time position, but after that, you might be able to piece some orders together or whatnot. But anyway, that was I just come off orders and didn't really have another job lined up, so I just remember, I don't know how I found it. So on, Craigslist, or I kind of grew up on my relative's farm northeast of Brookings, and I just remember seeing a advertisement for farm help, and I called him up, and he brought me on, and I told him kind of what my obligations were. I got guard drill and stuff, so there's I can't be here every day, but I'll be glad to. So I just drove grain cart and drove truck hauling grain into Canton, and just kind of whatever else needed to be done. So,
Yeah, because I think we had a hunter's night in here. We have wild game feed once a year. That's coming up in February here. But I decided to have one where it was during hunting season, and we called it Hunter's Night.
Yep.
And there was, 10, 12 people showed up, something like that. But you and Duke showed up, and that's when you told me that you worked for the farmer just right up here. So that surprised me. Fighter pilot sitting in your hog house telling you that he's farming as well.
Yeah, no, I like all that stuff, so it's a nice change of pace, from the intense job of being a fighter pilot to just running a tractor. It's relaxing, I guess. So
yeah, you got to have some downtime.
Yep. So you bet.
Is there any other deployed flying stories or non-flying stories you'd like to relay?
I guess the other highlight of my career was I went through, just prior to going to Afghanistan, the squadron sent me through a instructor pilot upgrade down in San Antonio. And that was another both high and low point in my career. Again, I was way out of my comfort zone, and like the first few rides, like I probably didn't pass 3 or 4 times. So I mean, I was again starting to wonder, like, is this for me, and can I do this? Where like I've never really thought that or asked myself that throughout my life, you know. So, but you know, the first phase is air to air, which we don't do a lot of, but it's a very, you know, dynamic environment, and it's hard to fly correctly, but it's also even tougher to teach that. So I struggled with that pretty hard, but I got through it, and I came out of there, and then I was home for a few weeks, or maybe not even 2 weeks, and then shipped over to Afghanistan. But I felt like at that point in time I was, you know, just the sharpest and most tactical pilot that I probably ever was. And then
and you got to use it right away. So
yep.
Instead of waiting a year and a half.
Yep.
That's probably a good thing.
Then coming back to the squadron and instructing, and you know, the lieutenants that show up and being able to instruct them and make them into the, you know, the standard that we need them to be. There's a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment in doing that, because they're looking up to you for answers and guidance. You know, I remember, you know, when I was at that stage and, you know, struggling, and so that was kind of came full circle. And then I guess the other thing was, I remember in one of my interviews, they asked you, this was on the pilot board before I was, when I was interviewing, they asked you, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I honestly was like, well, I see myself on the other end of the table, like as the one asking the questions. And,
yep.
You know, and I did get to sit on one of our hiring boards, and again, that was kind of came full circle for me, because I remember, you know, being on the other end of the table, you're the one getting interrogated, and then now I'm the one asking the questions and making the decision, you know, who do we want the next level to be. So that was pretty neat as well.
Well, and like the IP upgrade school and anything else like that, you know, you don't want to beat yourself up too much, because if everybody was good at what they're teaching already, they wouldn't even have a school.
Yeah.
So you got to, like we said, be able to just swallow that and find the way ahead anyway. So Sounds like you were able to do that.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep, you bet.
So, and we can jump around wherever you want. So if something comes up more on your the flying and the military side and combat side, just say so.
Sure.
There's no problem there. But then you are no longer flying the F-16 anymore, correct?
Yeah, retired August of 22 already. So yeah, it's be 3 years in August of 25, which is crazy. So time goes fast, and it just gets faster. Older you get, but
well, your pace did not slow down, is my guess.
Yeah.
So you stayed in aviation.
Yeah. Yep.
Why don't you go into that?
Yeah. So I kind of started my own business, Pro Aviation, while I was in the Guard, kind of between when I was full time and kind of off orders. Basically just doing aircraft management and contract pilot services. So started with an older twin engine Cessna 340, just a business class, six seat aircraft that I had bought, and then I had a few other guys buy in that weren't pilots, and then I'd fly them around. So I did that for a while, and then that led to a job up in Dickinson, North Dakota, as a chief pilot for a charter company flying the Platus, the PC-12.
Is that a jet?
It's a turboprop.
Okay.
Yep. So I did that, and then that career move led to a type rating in a light business jet, the Premier jet, for a family out of Watford City, North Dakota. And then, fast forward, that jet ended up in Sioux Falls, and basically it's multiplied, so I'm up to 6 aircraft now that I manage, and then also fly for the owners, and then there's dry leases set up on each aircraft too. So that's kind of my full-time job. I fly one of the jets is owned by a family here in Sioux Falls. That's kind of my full-time job, and then.
So you didn't have to own and purchase all those aircraft, but you're
Right.
the aviation management portion of that.
Yep, and like I don't have a charter certificate, so like matter of fact, I can't own the aircraft and fly them for hire.
Sure.
So, but I just take care of the all the acquisition, the insurance, scheduling, maintenance, making sure that gets done, logbooks updated, the legal paperwork, FAA paperwork, finding air crew, because I can't fly them all. So I have one full-time pilot that works for me, and then a handful of contract pilots that I use. So
Contract maintenance as well, or do you have mechanics that work right for you?
it's contract maintenance. Yeah, so there's a shop here in the Sioux Falls Airport, and then there's some of the higher maintenance, and I'll have to take it off station. But yeah, so that's kind of what.
Do you have much
what I'm
trouble
doing now.
scheduling maintenance or being able to get their time? Are they pretty busy, or do they work pretty well with you and just get everything done pretty much on time?
Yeah, it's. I try not to be the guy that just calls and say, "Hey, I need this done now," because the maintenance shops are all very busy, and depending on the scope of the maintenance, how in depth it is, if it's just a tire change, well, it's not a big deal. But if it's a major phase inspection or something, then it requires some more lead time. But I got a pretty good relationship with the maintenance shop here in town, and I give him a lot of business, and he does a good job. So it's life is about relationships and who you know and how you treat them, and so
I've said that many times.
yeah, and that's kind of one thing the military has taught me as well. But so yeah, it's as long as I stay on top of it, it's I've learned over the years, just I've been doing this long enough now to know that you can't just. It's not like your car. You just go drop it off for an oil change, and it's done the next day. It's
a lot of planning.
A lot more planning, and a lot of liability. And if maintenance isn't up to date, and you have a claim, all insurance probably won't cover it. So you're talking millions of dollars, in airplanes, and obviously the safety of the passengers and stuff. So there's something that's you got to take seriously. So
Do you have a partner at your level, or are you you're the man and then you're in between the owners and everything below you? Are you the man for that?
Yep. Yeah. So far, I'd like to, what I struggle with is if I'm flying all day, or like yesterday, I had to reschedule this deal and had to fill in for somebody else. And when I fly all day, I can't answer emails and phone calls, and so that as I'm growing, I'm trying to kind of find somebody to take over some of those duties to where I can not fly as much and just kind of do some of the business side of stuff, because I'm doing invoicing, and
You don't want to be
paying
a single
bills
point of
and-
failure
Yeah, right.
anywhere.
Yep.
Not with the aviation career field.
But it takes time, and as you can't just go hire somebody off the street. It takes a pilot with a lot of experience to for them to be insured, and they got to have a type rating in these jets, which there's several weeks of training for that, and tens of thousands of dollars, and so that's been the struggle is finding people to to fly these aircraft. So
Were you getting this started? Was it in the baby stages of this business while you were still flying with the Air Guard? Like before you got done with 16s, you already had a pass set?
yep, yeah. So like I said, I kind of started in 2014. I would
Says
say
a while ago, then.
after I got back from Afghanistan, that's when I took over management on the first jet, and then fast forward to now, that one turned into 5 more. So It's really picked up here in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'd like to keep growing, but honestly, it's, you know, I'm out of hangar space. I don't have pilots. I'm kind of, you know, I don't want to pretend like I can provide a quality service when I can. So I'm kind of happy where I'm at now. If you know, I got some plans to get some more hangar space and maybe build one and stuff. But until that happens, I'm kind of just happy with where I'm at right now.
There's something to be said for contentment,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I mean, just whatever business scenario. Most people have heard of a business or two that, you know, just wanted to grow, then they get too big. And
Yep.
the word "too" is the key word in that statement. They get too big and it just gets hard to manage, and then
Right.
then it falls through. So
Yep.
sounds like you know when to say when on that.
Yep. And you know, obviously hindsight's 20/20, but you know, I wish I would have went to school for business, you know, because that'd be really, really beneficial right now. But I mean, it's all stuff you can figure out, but you make mistakes along the way, and some of those are costly, but you know, it can be done. But it's just like, man, I really wish I would have, you know, taken some business classes and
Sure.
But the older I get, the more I realize you just can't do everything, and I mean, you're just gonna have to, you know, settle with not being able to do everything I want to do. And
Like I said, you got to have some downtime. You got to.
Yeah.
I used to ask people, how do you recharge your batteries, you know, kind of thing.
Yep.
Which might lead us into the other part of your life. Like
Yeah.
I said, we can always jump back to any subject
Yeah.
we've talked about. If something comes up, just say so.
Yep.
But what else was it that you moved into that maybe it took a lot of time and energy and money, but maybe recharge your batteries? Walk us through that and see if, and we'll find out if it was a stressful situation or just fun.
Are we talking about the dirt track stuff?
Yeah,
or,
bet.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, what Jimbo's alluding to is, you know, I own a sprint car racing team, and one of those kind of bucket list items, you know, childhood dreams that, you know, I figured would always be a dream, but you know, growing up, there was never an option. You know, the money wasn't there, time wasn't there. You know, parents would never allow it. You know, the
Right.
risk, and it just, you know.
Some
But,
start with go-karts when they're real little.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you're going to make a career out of racing, you got to start as a, you know, 6 or 7 year old. But anyway, it was kind of, you know, we grew up going to, you know, Heath Speedway, not regularly, but you know, enough. My mom, she grew up going to, you know, Jackson, Motoplex, and you know, as a kid, so she kind of had that racing blood in her too. But I got to the point where, you know, I bought an acreage south or north of Sioux Falls, and built a shop. So you know, I had a place to, you know, work on stuff, and didn't have to rent a shop. You know, already had a pickup and flatbed, you know, car trailer. So I mean, I was, you know, good assortment of tools. And I think it was Father's Day weekend of 2019. Just learned of a guy that was moving from a B mod to a sprint car, and he was selling his stuff. And I was kind of like, well, if not now, you know, when. And so I went over there, and I really didn't know much about anything racing at the time, but bought his car, which is pretty much ready to run, minus a seat, and a whole pickup bed full of spare parts and tires and wheels, and I think like for $5,000.
I don't know much about racing, but what's a B mod?
B mod, it's a, you know, stock car, body car, similar to, it's kind of like a NASCAR, but the front end, like the wheels are open, you know. So
Okay.
but it's a full size, you know, car. where the sprint cars are, though smaller they got the big wing on top and on the nose. So,
Right.
So that's kind of where I started, and didn't know anything. Still really don't know a whole lot about it. But Angela Karsrud, she was in life support at the time, and I knew her husband Dan, who works in the engine shop, at the Air Guard still.
Mm-hmm.
He raced B mods, and just a great guy, and great family. But he kind of jumped in and was helped me get going, and has helped me the whole way. But
so he had experience driving wise and mechanic wise.
Yeah,
both?
so he raced. He's, I don't know, at one point in his career, probably high school, he was racing hobby stocks, and then moved up into a B mod, and then just life. Got married and kids, and racing, it's obviously expensive and time consuming, and that was kind of the first thing on the chopping block. So he got out, and then kind of got his way back in it was kind of through me, and obviously he knew everything that I didn't. And Tyler Martin, he's in the sheet metal shop, still in the Guard, so he was a big help too. And so that's kind of how I got started, and then I kind of moved up from there fairly very quickly, if you kind of in the whole scheme of things here. But raced that for the remaining part of 2019, and then my neighbor lives a mile north of me. Him and his one of his best friends, they raced sprint cars for 20 plus years, and just so happened they were getting out, and so I bought their team out, which was there's basically 3 different classes of sprint cars, and they're all related to cubic inches on the engine. So the 305, which is 305 cubic inch engine, or about 500 horsepower. That's kind of where you start. It's the most restricted. It's supposed to be the least expensive class, and so that's kind of where you start, and then move your way up. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then part of that buyout, I came with a 360 cubic inch engine, 720-ish horsepower. So we put that in, and then I raced that, and as you move up, there's just more horsepower, higher speed, but also the money's better too. Whether you don't have to win the race, but like just to start the A main, you might be, I think for the 305 is $160 to start 360 race. You're 300 to probably 350, and then in the 410 you're 500. So I did the 360 stuff for a while, and then I had all my 305 stuff, and Dan he's got a much larger passion for racing than I do, and just kind of asked him. I was like, hey, how do you feel about getting in a sprint car, and you just run my stuff, and then bring some sponsors to the table, and you can race until you wreck enough stuff until the money runs out, and,
right.
So yeah, he's been driving my 305 here for the last couple years, and
it's been that long, because I did hear that he got back into it, talking through the Vine,
Yep.
and that was his first time doing sprint car. Then
yeah,
was with you.
Yeah. So he came out of a body car and into a sprint car, and he got a win at Huset's. It was his first year in a sprint car, which is that's a big deal.
That's what I had heard, that he had won in his first year.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was first race, but first
no,
year.
Definitely wasn't the first race, but and I got him into did a couple 360 races here this last year, and so then so summer of 23, he just runs 305s and then 410s, and I ended up buying a 410 summer of 23, and so I raced the remaining season at Huset's in the 410, which is, I mean, now we're talking 900 plus horsepower in a 1,500 pound car. And so I did half season 410, then 2024 I did a full season in the 410, and it was mostly just kind of once you have all the stuff, it just financially made more sense to run the 410.
Well, you said when you're a kid you wanted to go fast, or you wanted to be in fast planes, so now fast cars.
So yeah, like I said, I moved up pretty quick, and definitely not any good, but it's it's just a hobby, and it's an adrenaline rush. Like, it's hard to find anything that compares to that. But
what did you notice in driving style when you went from one to the next to the next?
I mean, just the horsepower jump, and with that comes a speed. But
having to watch the throttle a little bit more, or just everything's different.
Throttle control is a lot of it, because there's just the 410 has so much power and torque that every throttle movement you make, whether it's in the gas or out of the gas, like the car reacts differently. So the car is, it's almost uncontrollable. I mean, it's so throttle movement control is huge, but with the power, like it'll pull the front end right off the ground under certain track conditions, and just very, very twitchy. Hard to put it where you want it. And like Huset's is a challenging track to run, just because it's narrow and it's short, so you're constantly turning, going down the straightaway, you're turning to the right, to keep the car, because the car is set up to, you want to turn left all the time. So you're counter steering, and then you're going in the corner, and depending on what line you're running, the car is doing something else, and you can control the traction with you got a wing slider, so the big wing on top will slide back, and similar to the controls on a aircraft, will provide more down pressure if you need more traction if the car starts getting loose. So you're messing with that, you're getting hit with, well, especially me, I'm always in the back, so I'm getting plastered with mud, so you got tear-offs on your helmet, trying to drive with one hand and rip the tear-offs off, or hold your hand up to try and keep the mud from, depending on if the track is muddy or whatnot. And meanwhile, you're inches away from other cars, and the sprint car being open wheel, and the tires are super sticky, so if you touch, usually one or both of you is gonna go for a ride. These cars are probably $60,000 on up, so just a flip, just the top wing on the top of the car, it's over $1,000 to replace that. So it's I didn't want to be the guy out there running into people and causing accidents,
right,
especially at the 410 level. I mean, you're racing against guys that do it for a living and have been doing it their whole life, and they're racing for points, championships, and to win. Which I think to win, it's $5,000, which is a big part of their racing program, and you don't want to be the guy that's got the clown shoes on out there, and so I felt like, obviously very uncomfortable initially, but I felt like I could at least stay out of people's way, and there's a certain amount of etiquette that comes with. Yes, obviously everybody's trying to win and push their car and their ability to the max, but you kind of got to know your limits, and that you're not the only one out on the track, and so it's. But
when you were talking about control, going the dozen or so times, in the last 20 years that I've been out there, I was there for one of your races. I got your shirt over there.
Yep.
But just especially the 410s, when they're coming around, you're looking at the front wheels, and they're just really flipping. I mean, way flipping. Is it just a little bit of movement of the steering wheel that gets a lot on the front, or what's that steering like? And is it just a normal thing, or are you making it do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's to to keep the car, to try and keep it doing what it's doing is, those are real inputs. I mean, the smoother you can be, the better, but I mean, sometimes it's like you're constantly making steering inputs, and honestly, if you're only really turning the wheel, you shouldn't really go past the 3 or the 9 o'clock position. If you are,
Sure.
you're probably over controlling the car isn't set up right, but you can change the ratio on the steering a couple different ways, but that's what it takes to keep that car from to try and hold the line or that you're trying to run. But like the 305 is like it's underpowered. They're still fast. I mean, it's still a real race car, but with the 360 and the 410, you have the ability to pretty much always break the tires loose, and you actually steer quite a bit with the throttle because you got the smaller tire on the right rear, the bigger tire, or the small tire in the left rear, bigger tire in the right rear. So it's like a solo cup. If you're going to roll it on the table, it always wants to. So that's the exact same concept. So you can set the car and do different things with the throttle in the 360 that you can't do in the 305. Where in the 305, and you're pretty much just foot to the floor the whole time, unless the track really slicks off, and you kind of. But then you got the brake on the left foot. So I mean that's. You're using the brake sometimes the same time as the throttle because that'll do different things to the car to help it turn and kind of pull it down. And so there's just so much more than meets the eye. I remember going to the races and, it's obviously as a kid, you want to see the wrecks and stuff. That's the exciting part. But I tell you what, I couldn't be farther from the truth now because I just know how much work it is to rebuild a car, and how much money it takes to fix that stuff, and just your consumables like the right rear tires are $325, and for a 410 you're probably getting 1 maybe 2 nights on it.
Oh wow!
The fuel you're going through several gallons of fuel, which I mean if we're talking $4 or $5 a gallon, it's probably the cheapest thing, but. But yeah, to answer your question, it's like I am at the end of a race, like I'm exhausted. Like you're working, and it's like I said, it's a huge rush, but it's also a lot of work too. But
through the 4 different classes, did you get to know very many of the other racers, and did it get to be less as you increased in the classes, or how did that work with like friendships or acquaintances?
Yeah, I've met a lot of great people. It's like any organization, it's most of them are willing to help, and you'll see a lot of times guys from other teams, in other people's pits trying to help get somebody out on the track. Because I mean, it's for the most part it's kind of one big family. As long as you're kind of willing to learn, and not the guy running into people and like just. But that's one thing I didn't really expect getting into the racing. Is just the friendships and relationships that I've made, and just experiences that I've had. And most of the time at the end of the night you can go over to somebody else's trailer and have a beer and laugh and joke, everybody give each other a hard time, and there's a lot of camaraderie with it. And
yeah, that race I was at with you, I walked around the back there and went there. That was just a blast, just hanging out with you guys for a while, and grabbed your T-shirt at the time and stuff, and the cars were there. Shannon was there, and it was just fun. It's a fun atmosphere, and it was cool.
Yeah, and we're trading racing T-shirts, and it's the friends that I'll have, whether I'm racing or not, so, and it also gives you somebody else to cheer for too, whether it's not everybody runs the same class, or some guys travel and run some of the bigger shows, and it gives you somebody to kind of watch and cheer for and support. So
one of the other things I noticed is, to me, for as short as some of those races are and as small as the track is, the passing just seems extremely difficult. So, and in the 410s, of course, you got a lot more power. So it seems like if they see a small opening, they can jet right in there a little faster.
Yep.
But describe the passing on the different classes.
Well, for me, it's scary, just because I'm just not that talented of a driver. I just don't have the experience, So I'm when I'm trying to get around the car, I make sure I can clear them, and like I'm not the one in there. A lot of the more experienced drivers, they'll come right in there and they'll just move you right out of the way. And they can do it very skillfully and not wreck you. And
a little bit of intimidation factor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they'll tap you on the bumper, or just stick their nose in there and just kind of push you up out of the way. Or I can't say I've done a whole lot of passing in the 410s, at least at Houston's, because just the talent level, But
is that a smaller track than normal?
Yeah, it's they call it a 3/8 track, but it's actually a tight 3/8. So it's just not very wide. Short tracks are honestly more fun to drive. You get better racing. You get bigger tracks like Knoxville and stuff. It's after the first lap or two, there's really not, the cars get so far spread out that there's just not a lot of passing going on. So, but
you've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's like I said, life's it's just too short to do everything that I want to do, But so I'm kind of not really good at any of it. Just get good enough, I guess. So,
well, I'm sure you're being plenty modest as well. But yeah, there's well, I guess I'll ask you the same question as fighter pilot training. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Man, I probably hope to be doing less flying and just kind of getting ready to transition to the retirement phase of life. I mean, it's I'm passionate about aviation, and it's not really work. So I dread the day that I can't fly anymore, whether it's whether I'm getting paid or not. But I'm just kind of I don't really say no to flights right now, because it's good money and supports all the things that I like to do. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like work. I enjoy it, and I'm flying multiple different aircraft, and each one's a little bit different, and I'm going from small airports like Oneida to big airports out to East West Coast, and Phoenix yesterday. So I just have a real comfortable variety, and I don't get bored with the flying I'm doing, and I'm home pretty much every night, and I've been able to I kind of probably have 20, 25 inch or ish clients that are kind of my regulars, so I get to know them pretty well, and on a personal level, where if flying for the airlines or something, it's, you don't really know who's back there, so but got to be good friends and business acquaintances with a lot of them, and they teach me stuff too, and I'm just kind of real fortunate to be able to do what I want to do, and I really like being my own boss for the most part. So that's kind of something I always wanted to do, and there's a lot of freedom, but I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's 20 years of being told what to do is, now I feel a lot more free, and kind of call my own shots and do things how I want to do them and how I think they should be done. So
yeah, that 20 years seems like it went pretty fast.
Yeah, it really did. I remember when I was in, once you start getting to ops, and they have these finny flights. Basically a pilot's last flight, whether it's in the squadron or all together. But I remember some of the when I was in the B course at Luke Air Force Base, one of the instructors had his finny flight, and I remember him saying, just right where you're at right now is like enjoy this as much as you can, because it goes by quick. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. I got, I don't want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and if you just never forget how fortunate you are, and you think you're unhappy or you got it bad. There's somebody, thousands of people out there that would gladly take your spot, and that want to be in your spot. And I remember him saying, that day he took off and looked out, and you could see the shadow on the runway or just off the runway, and watch the gear come up, and like you're just puts in perspective like what you actually get to do. And I've kind of kept that with my whole career, because there's been times where I'm just like, well, I don't want to be doing this right now, and like you don't even want to fly, and I have to ask myself, is like, you don't want to fly a single seat fighter, and that I kind of have to swallow my pride and be like, yeah, dude, why are you even thinking that?
Yep. You just reset.
So,
yeah, I love going to those finny flights, and I love being part of the fighter squadron in the first place as an enlisted person. But attending those finny flights, man, there's always emotion there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember my last radio call, gear down call, and I was choking up a little bit. It was just hard to get out, so.
Yeah, when it came to your Finney flight, I'm like, he's got 20 years already?
Yep.
I mean, it didn't seem like 20 years to me.
No.
It just seemed like 10,
Yeah,
actually.
it ended up with 20 years and about 6 months, almost to the date. So
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yep.
So you're not flying F-16s anymore, as far as taking up your weeks and months
Right.
of working time. You've got the flying business that you started. That sounds like that's going really well.
Yep.
Are you in for the next racing season?
You know, I think I'm actually going to take a step back here this year. It's one of those things I've kind of had my fun with, but it consumes the whole summer.
Yep.
And it's a ton of work, and I didn't realize that when I first got in it. But unless you're doing it full time, meaning you're getting paid to do that. I'm working full time, and it would take me to do it right, to get the car ready. I mean, it takes a couple 2-3 hours in the shop every night all week to get that car ready for the next. We're talking engine maintenance and bolt checks, and that's if you don't wreck, fixing what's broke and resetting the car up and re-greasing stuff and cleaning air filters and fuel nozzles and fuel filter. I mean, it's just and then you get to the weekend, and it's like from working regular job and then working on the car, it's like, God, I don't know if I want to race anymore. Like I just want to chill. My family's got a lake cabin, and I haven't spent much time up there the last few years, and I got a place out on the Missouri River. I was out there one time last year, and that it's not so much the expense, but I made some big purchases this year. Bought some land and kind of grew the business, and I'm just I kind of want my summers back.
Can't blame you for that.
My parents are getting older, and my dad, how we spend time together and bond is in the outdoors, hunting in the fall and fishing in the rest of the time, and I just kind of want to get back to that, and I've had my fun with it, and it's one of those things that I wanted to do and did, and I'm not saying there's probably gonna be times where I just want to go out and rip a few laps, a night, but it's back in the peak racing season, you're racing 2-3 nights a week, and going down to we were traveling down all the way down to Texas and Knoxville, Iowa for the nationals, and I mean it's an absolute blast. Don't get me wrong, but it's just you just can't do it all,
and you have done it.
I've done it, and I know what it's like, and so I'm gonna take a step back this year and just kind of if I miss it that much, you can always pick it back up, and
because you don't have to sell everything right away.
Nope. You don't. Like I said, it's a hobby for me, and it's not paying any bills, So and then you get sponsors on board that they give you a lot of money, and it almost gets to the point where it's like, well, you want to race to get their name out on the track, and so but I just don't want to feel like I have to, and I'm still going to spend plenty of time at the track this summer, just whether it's in the pits or in the stands, or now it's stressful. The race night is stressful. Especially we were at Houston, so we're running 2 cars and trying to set both cars up, and get the staging on time, and watch each other, and then if you got issues, like I don't know, it's just it's a lot of stress for just really seconds or minutes racing. Right. I mean, you got your hot laps, and heat races are 8 laps long at I don't know, 14, 15, 16 seconds each, and then your features are, so I mean it's a lot of work for if you really break it down and look at it. It's it's a lot of work for just a little amount of fun. But I don't regret it by any means.
Sure.
But I kind of hope someday, like I'm the team owner, and I have somebody driving for me that's more talented than I,
right,
ever will be, and that way I still got a car on the track to cheer for, and you're still in it.
Probably some good young drivers that don't have the cash to get into it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, so
just have to pick one.
Yep. Yep. So,
do you have any serious wrecks or anything where physically you were worried about yourself as opposed to just the car?
So I guess last year was the last race of last year was probably my biggest one and kind of the most eye opening, and it wasn't really that bad. I think it was during a heat race. Maybe it was a B feature or something, but track was super heavy, a lot of moisture in it, so there's a lot of traction in it. And going back to like the 410, we'll pick the nose right up off the ground if under certain conditions. While I think I just had my foot to the floor coming out of turn 2 and put my foot in the floor, and the car just snapped. Like it was so fast I didn't even, because I pulled wheelies before, and a lot of times you can kind of feather the throttle and bring it back down, but it snapped so fast. I didn't have time to get out of it, and then it kind of came back on the right rear, and then it slammed down, and then the right front, because it didn't come down square, so that kind of dug in, and I just cartwheeled, and then I remember as I was tumbling down the backstretch, I was like, oh, this ain't so bad. And the car stood up on its nose, and it just almost hung there, and then it came, and just fell back flat, and then just that pancake, like there's no suspension, and I just felt pain shoot down my spine.
Could imagine. And
it almost like my vision almost like blacked out for a minute, and all the motorsports is statistically very safe. Like there's seldom, there's compared to other sports, and so it's very safe. But like the guys that are getting hurt, they're all back injuries, and broken backs and fractures and stuff like that. And it's from that force that there's no padding in the seat, and it's just that blunt force straight down your spine. And I was like, whoa. That was pretty eye-opening.
Well, you're young and in shape yet, and you hate to get a debilitating injury.
Well, that's the thing,
you're in preservation mode, is what I call it.
Yeah, there's risks to everything, and if you're not taking a risk, you might as well just sit on the couch and not do anything. But if I can't fly, that's going to significantly impact my way of life, and and I knew that kind of going into it, and I probably don't drive as hard as I probably would, mostly because it's my stuff that I'm paying for if I wreck. But at the same time, it's like that's always in the back of my mind. It's like is passing this car for second to last place really worth it? Right. Where I could wreck. So yeah, that was probably the one that stands out the most. And I'm not. It's not because of that. I'm not scared, but I was kind of, well, this is definitely a very real risk.
Yeah, makes you think even just a little bit more than you already have.
Yep. But no, again, very fortunate to not be injured.
Mm-hmm. So then, hunting and fishing is pretty much your only other hobbies, or is there something else?
I guess that's what I do the most. But I got a lot of older vehicles that I haven't really had time to work on, but I got an old Jeep and a couple old Ford pickups that I hope to one day to kind of restore. And I bought that chunk of land around my house, so I hope to put a grass strip in and get something I can fly off the grass here. Hopefully in the next year. And so yeah, I guess that's kind of what we got a handful of animals. So we got a mini donkey and chickens and a turkey and I think a duck and a pig, and we just recently got a alpaca.
Oh, did you?
So we kind of got a little funny farm going on. So they're fun. Just
That's part of the relaxation, I think, the atmosphere that you have out there, being out in the country.
It gives you some structure. You got to do chores every day, and so I enjoy doing that, and they're fun to have around, and I look forward to kind of the land that I bought it's got some easements on it, so I can't really do a whole lot, but there's like a 3-acre plot that I want to put a food plot in, and just kind of it was restored back to its natural state, so it's all natural grassland, big stem grass, and I shot a real nice deer with my bow off it like the first time I hunted it this year, and there's
Really?
a lot of pheasants out there and coyotes, and just kind of enjoy looking out the window and knowing that this is what South Dakota looked like before we were here, and
right.
That I own it, so it's kind of I enjoy that, but it's also expensive, but so there's just enjoyment in that, and I hope to get out to the river fishing here more this year, and spending time on the lake, and so I enjoy doing wake surfing and wakeboarding, so it's a little lower impact sports, and I guess I'm sure maybe you're gonna bring it up, but I got that old military fighter jet trainer that I own, so
I had totally forgotten about that.
yeah,
I wouldn't have remembered. Let's go into that. Remind me.
Probably, yeah. So it's called an L29 Aerovakity L29. It's made by the Czech Republic, and the one that I own. Well, I guess back to how I acquired it. Like, I wasn't looking for one by any means. It found me, so at least that's what I. That's what I say.
I wonder if anybody's got a Czech Republic jet for sale.
So my mechanic, he's down at the T airport, knew the owner who had another airplane, and was selling both of them, and he was like, "Man, I bet I know somebody that might be interested in that." And it was actually, so it was January of 23. That this all came about, and it was up in Watertown, of all places, like that old World War II stone hanger out in the middle airfield, and that's where it was. Hadn't flown since about fall of 2020, and I guess the guy that owned it had a German pilot on a visa that expired, so the guy that owns it's not even a pilot. So his pilot got deported, and it just kind of sat, and we went up there and looked at it, and my biggest concern was like, well, I don't want a static display, you know what I mean?
Right.
And like it's a 1973 L29, pretty much all original, with the exception of it's got a transponder and radio, and there's required equipment. But we went up and looked at it, and we're like, yeah, let's keep moving forward with it, see where it goes. And
is an ejection seat part of required equipment?
So they do have ejection seats. It's a 2-seat, front to back seating, but the seats have been decommissioned, so they're not hot.
So you have no way to get out of there.
You can bail out. I have 2 seat style parachutes that you wear, and it is possible to get the canopy open and bail out, but very unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, me and the mechanic, his name's Wyatt, went up there and looked it over, and then we're like, well, let's see what it's going to take to maintain it, and how do we replace parts, and I mean just consumables like brake pads and tires and just all that engine oil and all that stuff. And we kind of started snooping around. It was actually there's a lot of them in the U.S. And a lot lot of spare parts, surprisingly. So you just gotta know where to look. But mine came out of the Bulgarian Air Force, and it's still got the Bulgaria Air Force insignia on the bottoms of the wings, which is pretty neat. And I got all the original logbooks. It's all written in Russian from day one. So it's pretty. I mean, just that alone, it's like very nostalgic and pretty neat.
That is amazing.
Comes with a dash one, just like the F-16 has, a military format and in English, obviously, and all the units are in kilometers per hour and liters and just all stuff we're not used to. But anyway, we had it towed up into the hangar in Watertown, and to access the engine, it's got a Motorlet 701, which is a single stage centrifugal compressor and axial flow single stage turbine. But to access it, you have to remove the whole entire tail section. There's actually just 4 bolts that hold it on, and you slide a tail stand underneath of it, and slide the whole thing off, and probably the tailpipe is probably 8 feet long.
Do you have a tail stand, or would you have to fabricate one?
No, this one came with one. It was fabricated, so it was kind of antiquated, but it worked, and so we basically did a combination pre-buy inspection / it's has a experimental exhibition / air racing airworthiness certificate, but it's registered in the U.S. and it's cleared by the ATF, and so it was pretty much ready to go. So we did that and fired it up, and it had been sitting for almost 3 years, and it started right up, and
that had to be quite a feeling.
Yeah, so I was like, is this really happening? Like, are we really doing this? And then, but it took about a year and a half to get all the paperwork squared away. So the guy who bought it, who owned it, never registered it with the FAA. So that took a while to get that undone. Finally got that done, and then because it's an experimental and the nature of it, it's an ex-military aircraft, and they consider it, a weapon system. I mean, it's got chaff flare tubes on it. It's got hard points for either drop fuel tanks, rocket pods, 330-pound bombs, or gun pods. It's got identification friend or foe, basically radar warning system. So I mean, it's a legit weapon system, and you need a program letter because the FAA, they want to know where it's based, and they only give you 175-mile radius to operate this thing. And if you go outside of that, you're supposed to contact the FAA, and it's not like any other plane. You just hop in and go. In
a jet, 177 miles isn't much.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, you got to have an FAA approved maintenance inspection program. So it took a while to get that. We finally, and then because it's a jet, you got to have a type rating, and there's 2 people in the States that do that. So about a year ago, so February last year, I went down to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and there's a warbird training center down there, and he's got a handful. He's got a MiG-15, and he's got the L-29, L-39, some Italian Foga, whatever. But anyway, got my type rating in the L-29, and then this summer, we flew it. I flew it from Watertown to Sioux Falls. It's super easy to fly.
That had to be quite a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a trainer, so it's super easy to fly.
You own this thing.
Yeah.
That's another part of that dynamic.
Yep. And one goofy thing about it, or it took some getting used to, it's got nitrogen brakes on it, and you actuate them with a lever on the throttle, or not the throttle, the control stick. So it looks like a legit, just a big brake lever, like off a bicycle. And you got nitrogen bottle that supplies nitrogen gas to the brakes. And then, traditional aircraft, the rudder pedals, you are connected to the nose wheel via cables or, hydraulically, and that's how you steer. Well, so there's no, and then the brakes, toe brakes, but so there's no brake pedals on the rudder carriage assembly. So the brake, there's one lever on the control stick, and then to turn the aircraft, the nose wheel is just free castering. And there's a shuttle valve in the rudder pedal carriage assembly. So, like if you wanted to turn left, you would push left rudder, which would divert more gas to the left brake to turn the aircraft. And so you're constantly, slamming the rudder pedals back and forth and like blending in the brake to taxi the aircraft until.
Good thing you've got some tractor experience, right?
Yeah. So, and they're not that effective. I mean, they are like bicycle brakes.
Right.
It's not like they're not hydraulically actuated. There's no anti-skid, so you can. Landing especially, you got to be careful not to lock them up, blow the tires. There's some things you got to be
some risk
with.
Like I say, you're just not sitting on the couch.
But as far as it's built, very robust. It was made for landing on unimproved airfields, like grass and gravel, and it's got trailing link gear. But yeah, just a super neat airplane, and it's basically, the Air Force version of the T-37. So that was like the first training aircraft that, my counterparts, other parts of the world were training in when I was training in I trained in the T-6, but it's same vintage as the T-37 that, the Air Force retired. But yeah, just super neat. And it was, the instructor was, sat in the back, and so there's all kinds of things that the constructor can do to fail systems, like from the back seat, for the student pilot up front. So that was kind of neat, and I've since gathered a lot of parts. These guys would go over to that part of the world and buy up these aircraft, take them apart, put them in a shipping container, ship them over here, clear them with ATF, put them back together, get them airworthy, then sell them. So, I've talked to two guys that have each done, 20, 30 of these each. And then along with that, they'd go over there and fill up containers with parts, and ship them back over here and sell them. So I bought out a couple of guys. So I got wheels, tires, brakes, hydraulic filters, fuel filters. I got a front, windscreen for the canopy. I got a brand new horizontal stabilizer. I got engine control boxes, ignition boxes. Basically, and several sets of brakes. So I got enough stuff to hopefully keep it flying as long as I have interest in it. So
how many flights did it take to get your type rating?
I think I did 4 in a check ride. So I knocked it out in 4 days.
So then how many times have you flown the thing locally?
So I've only flown it twice here. I flew it from Watertown to Sioux Falls. And then, the first flight, there was some squawks, which, were expected. And so I flew it from Sioux Falls to T, which is actually where it's at right now. And so I had a bunch of work done on it down there, and we're just kind of waiting for the weather to get a little bit nicer. And it's...
So if you had some issues, was that just your flight straight beeline Sioux Falls to T?
Yep.
You didn't, there's no flying around because you knew you needed maintenance done or something on it?
Well, from Watertown to Sioux Falls was like, yeah, I just want to get this thing on the ground, and
yep.
But then the second flight, I went out to west of Sioux Falls, did some acro, and just kind of put it through space a little bit, just because obviously I'm not super comfortable in it yet, because with flying a single engine jet comes a whole slew of emergency procedures, and like I got to make my own checklist, but I had them all. I took pictures of it all on my phone, so I had access to it, in the air in case something happened. But like if the F-16, they just beat emergency procedures into you, so to speak. It's just,
right. It's got to be instinctual.
Yeah,
there's a checklist, but it's got to be instinctual.
For like a handful of emergencies, there's, what are, CAPS or critical action procedures, boldface, whatever. But those are, critical emergencies to where you don't have time to access a checklist and you have to do certain things, right. And in a short amount of time to, have the best chance of, safely recovering the aircraft. So like I'm not proficient on those yet. And like every time I fly it, I got to sit down and it takes me an hour or two just to go through it and go through all my speeds and, just how to operate it according to the
And if
Dash
you're
1.
building your own checklist, is that from the Dash 1?
It is, yeah. Okay. I'm basically taking a huge thick book and condensing it into a, just something you can put on your knee and access, quickly. So I have to do that yet. And the other drawback is it's not like, a single engine piston. Everybody just go out, pull it out, get in, start it, go fly, and come back. You gotta top off the nitrogen bottles before every flight, and they leak. Every time you squeeze the brake lever, it just vents that gas overboard. Through the brakes and overboard. So you got to keep an eye on that. And like the canopy seals are run off the same nitrogen bottle. So and it's pressurized and whatnot. So it takes probably an hour to get it prepped, and then you only got about a little over, I think, 369 gallons of fuel, and it's just it's 1970s technology, or actually earlier than that. I mean, I think they started building them in the early 60s. So I mean, the engine is super inefficient. Like it burns just as much fuel as like one of the business jets that I fly, and that has 2 engines. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it just goes through an insane amount of fuel, and you're good for. Mine doesn't have the external drop tanks on it, so you're good for a little over an hour, plus your reserves for flight time. So it's strictly a take it out on a nice day and go do some loops to music. And I'm looking forward to giving some fam rides and stuff.
Oh, really? That's cool. So how many flights are you planning like this summer? Just for just getting you more used to flying it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to fly it. I'd say once a week, during the summer months, but it's probably unrealistic. But
over a couple times a month, maybe.
Yeah. So like any airplane, they're meant to be flown, and you have less issues if you exercise everything. But I got to get comfortable in it first and make sure it's safe and before I start putting people in the back seat.
Sure. Well, if you fly over my place, let me know and I'll get some video of it. That's pretty cool.
It's loud. I mean, there's no afterburner or anything, but just the nature of it, it's loud. And my plan is to race it, to air race it. And they have the Reno air races, they shut that down, but they're starting it back up in September of this year.
Was there a crash or something that shut that down?
Yeah, there's like a crash every year. The last 2 years, there was both fatal crashes. One was in an L-29, actually, guy G-locked. So they shut it down. I think it's because of insurance reasons, but they moved it to New Mexico, and so that's where it's going to be held in 2025. And if I can't make it this year, since I'm not probably dirt track racing as much, and I don't know, you just don't show up to a race or an event like that and be like, oh, well, here I am, and pay your entry fee and go. There's kind of a process to get checked out, and but again, it's something that I'm not going to be any good at, and I'm not going to win, but it's kind of another bucket list item, and it's like, why not? But
there's a few dreams you're living that a lot of people would love to do just one of the ones that you do or have done.
So my plans with it, obviously get it safe and work all the bugs out, and then I'd like to paint it. I don't know if I want to do a realistic, original kind of military themed, or do like a strictly a race, exhibition theme, or kind of a combination of both, or I don't know. We'll see. But a lot of L29s that do the racing, they actually remove the original engine and put in a Pratt & Whitney JT60, which is a military engine used on the Saberliner and some other aircraft. But like the TBO, or the time before overhaul, on the original engine that's in it is 500 hours, which most modern day jet engines are, you do a hot section at 2,500 hours and an overhaul at 5,000 hours. So it's
pretty short.
Yeah, but again, you're only flying it an hour at a time. So you think about 500 flights. It'll last a while,
right?
So anyway, that might be in the future, and it basically doubles the thrust, and it's just more efficient, more reliable, easier to maintain, easier to find parts. And
I could see maybe you would be buying and doing the upgrade of the engine at 498.
Yeah, yep, yeah. So we'll see, but it's just kind of, it's mostly just a conversation piece right now. But as soon as kind of the weather, we get out of the winter months here, and I want to get some flights on it, and because it's definitely fun. It's old, but it's got push button landing gear and push button flaps, and all the instrumentation minus the airspeed indicator and altimeter are all original. So it's all in Russian, which is, it's just, I just think it's super cool, to think that somebody my age, or that followed my career path in another country, like this is what they flew.
Yeah. And you found a way to stay in a fighter.
Yep.
Really.
So,
oh my word.
So,
people talk about how many people, have gone in the military, how many have been special forces, how many have played for the NFL, how many have been fighter pilots, how many have done the things that you've done, and at the end have your own fighter jet.
Yeah.
That's pretty small percentage. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Again, it's nothing I ever dreamed that I would say I owned or really wanted. But I ended up getting it for not much more than probably would have been scrapped out for, so I don't have a lot invested in it yet. And
well, it's the upkeep that usually costs.
So yeah, I'm sitting good on it. It's I hope to fly it to some air shows and have it as a static, and if I know the Guard does that wings and wheels deal, I'd taxi it over there, and so we'll see. It's just something else to do. And
are there some of those that go to Oshkosh?
Yeah, there was at least one there last. I don't know if I was there last year. Year before last, there was one there, and actually, that's kind of one of my goals too. Is
it's not that far away.
Nope. No, you're probably one fuel stop away, and parking, the Warbird row, and that's probably something it'll be there when I deem it's worthy. So
yep, worthy and feasible.
Yeah. Yep.
Based on everything else you got going on.
Yep. So,
well, we've talked about your childhood, your growing up. You were basically the only one in your family in the military. Is that correct?
Yeah, except for, both grandpas did. One grandpa was drafted, and he did a short stint in the Navy. Never saw combat, and the war kind of ended before anything significant happened. My grandpa on my mom's side, yeah, he was a Navy CB, and I think he did, I was at 38 or 40, 41 years. It was something ridiculous. But other than that, so I guess I had a late uncle. He was an Apache pilot in the Army, but lived in Idaho, and then didn't really see him much. But nobody really influenced me to do it. But I guess that is something my grandpa and I had in common. But we'd always give every Christmas or whatnot, I'd give him an Air Force hat, and he'd give me a Navy something or other,
Right.
just we were always,
That's fun.
yeah. So
So that fighter pilot stuff, owning your own business, still in aviation on all parts of aviation, sounds like.
yeah,
And dirt track racing, and now, man, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah.
Because I'd heard that once.
yep,
And then it left me. So
yeah. I'll send you
with
some
the
pictures.
jet.
Pictures of it that you can add so people know what it is. But yeah, it's pretty neat how it ended up in Watertown of all places. Yeah, it's just this mystery to me, but just yeah, it's neat. So
Well, then the other good part of it is you mentioned the serenity and tranquility of your acreage, where you're at, the land, the grass, the history of that, the animals that you have. And I've always said, if there's one place for you to go, for anybody to go to feel absolutely comfortable, it's at home.
yeah,
I mean, for sure. So it sounds like you've mastered that as well. So
Yep.
you've got that place to recharge your batteries.
yeah. I mean, again, just more fortunate than I deserve. I moved on to that place January 2018. Yeah, so probably last week, 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, I guess. But the land was owned and managed by Ducks Unlimited. So they bought it from, and then restored it, plugged the Jane tile, and reseeded it back into natural grass and whatnot. And I was like, well, this is a pretty good place to live because I'm never gonna have a neighbor closer than a half mile, and the state leased it to hunt, so it was open to public hunting for all those years, even though I never really hunted much out there. But I learned it was going to come available, and I was like, man, I really need to try and get a hold of that. So luckily I had about 2 years to prepare, and just never, I grew up in the city, spent a lot of time on the farm, like in the fall, hunting mostly, and then going to SDSU. The farm was only 20 minutes away, so grew up, spent when I wasn't in class, I was either hunting or driving combine or driving, grain cart, or I had cattle, so I kind of know a little bit about all that stuff. But just really enjoyed that, but never would have guessed I'd have my own acreage, and then I'd have my own quarter land, and like I said, the plans are to put a grass strip on it and build a little hangar and have just a tail wheel, something I can fly, 2-seat, Piper Cub or something I can just fly off the grass. And like I just, again, it's just very, I think the word blessed is overused, but it's I don't know what other word I could describe it as. So just very, very fortunate. And
Well, it wasn't all by luck. I mean, it was based on good decisions in the past.
yeah,
So you've done some planning and things have worked out, and that's good on you.
I haven't done it all myself either. Life is about teamwork, and you just can't, as much as I would love to, I want to do everything myself all the time, and people ask for help. It's like, no, I'll do it, but you just can't. And I've been surrounded by a lot of great people and mentors, and the military has a lot, probably the most to account for that. But yeah, there's really not anything I'd change if I could do it over again, which I don't think a lot of people would say. So
That's good. That's a success right there.
Yep.
All right. Well, there's a question that I ask most people on here. You did say you've seen a couple of them, so maybe you're expecting it. But you don't have any kids right now, but you may in the future, or you definitely have other people in your family.
Yep.
Then you're going to have some, great grandkids, nieces, nephews, whatever. And so let's just say about 40 of them are sitting underneath that center camera right now. What would be some words of advice if they ever got to see something like this and see, hear about what you've done in your life? What would you like to pass on to them?
Yeah, I guess, find something you're passionate about, and don't ever doubt yourself. Like I said, I never, with the exception of the couple times I talked about, there's nothing that I never thought I couldn't do. Whether it's sports or flying airplanes or flying fighters or driving race cars, like I said, I'm not the best by any means, but it's really whatever you want to do. There's the opportunities there. It's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. 100% worth it. And like I kind of alluded to, it's you can't do it yourself, and it takes reaching out to people that have done it or know how to do it, that have the resources to help you along the way. But the minute you think you can do it yourself, you're probably gonna fail. So I guess that's what I would offer up.
Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, life's about relationships. Mm-hmm. I wholeheartely believe that.
Yep.
That's why we have the Hog House here too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like to share that.
Yeah, so. I always enjoy coming out here, and it's just a really unique.
Well, we appreciate it when you do.
Yep. So.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, sir. Yeah, thanks for having me, and appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
Yep.
And I always love hearing the details of where people have come from.
Yep.
And where they're going. So really appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jimbo.
You bet. Thanks for watching.